Hello and welcome to my channel. How are you doing today? My name is Lynn and this is the card that I'll be making in this video. It is a 5x7 bay window card that lights up. And for the light up mechanism, I'll be using Pear Blossom Press Easy Lights. And let's go ahead and make this. I'm going to start off with a panel that's cut to 5x7, a second panel that's cut to 1.5x5. Both of those were cut from 120-pound heavyweight white cardstock. This panel here will be our card front, and this is cut from 100-pound cover weight. It's actually from Spellbinders, and I do prefer a nice thick cardstock because this will be our card front, and as well because I'll be cutting the window openings through this, so we want to make sure that it stays nice and strong. This panel is cut to 7 3/8 of an inch by 5, and along that 7 3/8 of an inch edge, you want to score it at 3/8 of an inch, 5/8 of an inch, 2 3/8 of an inch, 5 3/8 of an inch, and 7 1/8. Then what you want to do is miter the corners on that first 3/8 of an inch section. That's going to be the glue tab that attaches this to that other 5x7 panel. Then we have two valley folds, so I've just flipped over to the back side and I've scored from the back side the lines that were scored at 5/8 of an inch and 7 1/8 of an inch. And then you just want to burnish all of your score lines, and that will give you a nice crisp fold. And this would give you a bay window card, a 5x7 bay window card, if you wanted to just use it as is. And each of those sections, we have a 1/4 inch section on the two ends. Inwards from that, we have 1 3/4 of an inch wide sections, and then that middle section is 3 inches, just to give you an idea for how to cut your mats and layers if you wanted to use this without cutting an aperture inside of it. I happen to have a die that measures 1 inch wide by 3 7/8 of an inch tall. It's actually from one of my Spellbinders nested die sets, and I'll try to leave links to everything that I'm using in the description box below. The solid color cardstock is also from Spellbinders because they have really nice 100-pound solid color cardstock, which I really wanted that thickness, and I thought it would be nice, since I'm just going to cut apertures into this, to have a colored cardstock instead of having to use white and then apply some mats and layers to it. So what I've done a moment ago was I lined up this die on one of the 1 3/4 inch sections, and I drew a little pencil mark so that I know how to line up my subsequent die cuts, so everything is in a nice straight line. And I used my T-ruler to extend that little mark all the way across the middle 3 panels. So the 1 3/4 inch panel, the panel next to it is 3 inches wide, and then the panel next to that is another 1 3/4 inch. I chose this die because it's going to cut out the perfect aperture. Well, it's not super perfect because the top and bottom actually have a wider margin than left to right, but it's sort of the closest one I could find. And that's what you want, is you want to find in your die stash a die that will cut out in one pass the aperture out of this section here, that first section. For the middle, I'm going to use the exact same die, because if you're using a nested die set, you're not going to have two dies that are the same height. But when you cut out your window aperture, you want all your window panes to be the same height. So I'm just going to do some repeat die cutting. So I've die cut it once, And I'm using my Cuttlebug and the Magic Mat, and so it's not the perfect sandwich combination. So these cuts aren't 100% going through. They're like 95% cut through, but I'm not too worried because these are easy straight cuts to clean up. So all you need to do to extend the window is overlap your die with the previous cut line. You should feel it kind of nestle in, and you can see me wiggling a little bit just to make sure that I have it locked in. I still have that pencil mark line, but I want to use both the pencil mark as a reference as well as use the previous cut line as a reference. And once I'm satisfied that I've lined it up, I definitely want to tape that down. Really make sure, even though I have a magnetic mat under this, I still want to make sure that it goes through and doesn't wiggle as it goes through. And then I'm gonna have to cut this a third time. Now, what I'm looking for here is to not only line up the cut edge of my die with the previous cut line, but I also want to make sure that I have that. It ends up being roughly about 1/4 of an inch distance from the edge of the metal on the die to the fold line. And so you also, as you saw a moment ago, flip to the back, and you should be able to see that your where your die overlaps with a previously cut area, it should be completely open. You shouldn't be cutting into any cardstock, and that's how you know it's lined up, so that you can extend that straight line and widen that aperture opening. So this is how you can get your center panel to be the exact same height and as your two side panels. The other option, if you don't want to use or don't have a die to do this, is you can just hand cut these aperture openings. You could draw out your rectangle and then just use a craft knife or and a steel ruler, or use utility blade, something like that, to actually cut your opening. So, couple of different approaches, whatever you want to do that's easiest for you, that you have, whatever materials available in your stash, you can achieve this look in multiple ways. So what I'm going to do is on the back, I am going to line all 4 edges of each of my aperture openings with some double-sided adhesive tape. This is roughly 1/4 of an inch. And what I'm aiming to do is actually, I'm going to try to be a little bit tidy here and try to get all of my tape edges to line up with each other. I normally don't really care too much about that, but I am not going to, once we cover this with acetate, you're going to see a little bit of that adhesive. And that's just the nature of acetate. Wherever you apply adhesive to acetate, you're going to be able to see a little bit of it. And I don't plan on covering it up, so I want to keep the acetate looking, if it's going to be slightly visible, I want it to look as tidy as possible. So here I've got, I have a huge, very wide roll of acetate, and I'm just going to cut this down to just a little bit taller, so about 4 1/4 inches tall, and about 1/8 of an inch more narrow than each of these sections. So I've got 2 panels that will be 1 5/8 wide, and then 1 panel that's 2 7/8 wide. You don't want it to be cut exactly to the width of each of those sections, because when we go to put our acetate down, you want to make sure that you don't cross over any of the score lines, because it doesn't fold down flat against this, but it will need to open up a little bit. So you just don't want to get that acetate too close to the score line. And of course, you want to burnish as much as you can to get all of that air out. And when you burnish acetate over a dry adhesive like this, pay attention to how much pressure you're using and what it looks like, because it will start to look more and more kind of clear or closer to the color of your cardstock the firmer and the more you burnish. And that's just because you're pushing all of the air out. And so take note of how much pressure you're using, because when you're burnishing paper onto paper, you don't get that visual feedback of a difference, being made. But when you're burnishing acetate, you can clearly see the difference in color, because that's basically all of the air coming out, and you see more of the true color of the cardstock. So that's just something that if you're ever wondering if you're burnishing enough, this is one way to tell, because you get that visual feedback. So on that first little 3/8 of an inch glue tab, I've put down some double-sided dry adhesive, and I'm gonna wrap this around to the back of my 5x7 panel. I am gonna squiggle on just a thin line of liquid adhesive just to really make sure this is a nice permanent hold. I imagine this might just be a card that somebody would want to keep. I am under no illusion that my cards are saved forever and ever, but given how unique this is, because it lights up, it just might very well be one that somebody would want to hold on to. So using liquid adhesive will make it a nice permanent hold, permanent bond. Then that next 1/4 inch section, I've just applied some liquid adhesive there and glued that section down. So now it's time to create the inside of our card. So I have this really cool embossing folder. I actually have a couple from Paper Discovery that are I don't know if they're in the exact same collection, but it's in sort of a similar theme, in the sense that she has a lot of different rooms that she has. It is different collections, because I think there's a there's a collection that's all about like your powder room. So there's a lot of different dyes to create a powder room look. This one happens to be a interior, sort of a living room setting, and I love it because it embosses beautiful sort of floral, almost like a wallpaper print design at the top. You've got your floorboards, your wooden floorboards and planks at the bottom. You've got your baseboard and some wainscoting. I mean, it's got fantastic detail. So I've just gone ahead and embossed that from 2 colors, solid color cardstock that I just taped together and then embossed them together. And I've die cut my Christmas tree here, which is a fantastic size. It's rather large, and it does take up nearly that full 5-inch height. And I'm just trimming as I go, just taking little slivers off, because I don't know exactly how much of the floor I want it to have showing versus how much I want to be wall. So you can always emboss a larger panel than what you need, and then trim it down as you go to have it fit and look just the way that you like. in this die set, which is actually called, it's a layering Christmas tree. And the layered part of it, I'm actually not using because you can add a snowy layer on top of this tree. However, this tree is going inside of our house. So the idea is that the bay window, we're looking from the outside into the house. And so this will be an indoor scene, and I've picked out a couple of the ornaments. I really like this particular shape. It's almost like the twinkle of a star. And what's actually really neat about this die set is that, and I think this is true of maybe all of the different ornaments, but you get 2 dies. The ornaments are also layered. So for each shape, there's 2 dies. One that cuts out a solid piece, and then one that cuts out the exact same shape and size, but there's actually a little aperture that's cut into the center. And so what I'm doing is I'm using both of there's actually 2 for this particular shape, there's 2 of each. So there's 4 dies that are the exact same shape, 2 that cut the frame that has the aperture, and 2 that just cut the solid. But since they're the exact same size, I used all 4 to cut openings into my tree. And then what I'm gonna do is cut some frames just using the 2 dies and here you can see how the frames look. Now, I originally cut them out of this cream colored cardstock, but I'm going to change my plan a little bit later once I preview this, and I switched it up to gold. So that'll change out. But behind each of these openings, so we're looking at the back of the tree here, I'm just taking little snips of some clear acetate. I've used my dotty tape runner so that I can get adhesive around those curvy edges. And I'm just going to back each of these openings with some acetate. That way we can inlay these little frames right back in. But see, the problem that I was realizing was that I cut my little ornament frames. Basically, I don't know if it was the exact same color as my wall, but pretty darn close if it wasn't. I was just using a bit of scrap that I saw on my desk, and I don't think that was the best choice. So and that's why I ultimately decided to change it to gold. Now, it would have been smarter if before I put the acetate, I actually put my little pencil marks through the aperture holes. That would have made it a little bit easier. But if you did it the way I did it, it's not impossible. But the idea is that you want to choose 3 of your openings to light up, because the easy lights from Pear Blossom Press, they come in a actually there's actually quite a few different options for you now. The one I'm using actually has 3 lights already wired and ready to go. And so that's why I've poked 3 holes into my wall here. You do have the option of getting circuits that have only 1 light. And now there's even a circuit that has a halo, like a complete circle. So really, really pretty cool. Lots of different options. And the circuit is not only pre-wired, you have the housing for your battery, and when you buy these circuits, it comes with the battery. So you really do have everything that you need. So I use my pokey tool to kind of widen these holes as much as I need to feed through the little light. And when I say little, it's little and it's flat. this is really remarkable. It's pretty cool. When you get this onto your project, it's actually, everything is very thin. The wires are really thin. The light is really thin and small. It doesn't mean it's not powerful. It's a pretty bright light. But in terms of putting this onto your card, it's not going to add a lot of bulk. Of course, the battery and the unit that holds your battery, that is bulky, but you can't avoid the bulk there because the battery is thick, and so there's not much that can be done there. But everything else, Amanda has made it so thin, and that's really perfect for this card because the battery holder I can actually hide under the easel that's going to be the stopper that holds our bay window open. And because everything is so flat in terms of the wiring and the lights, I actually don't really need to put foam under there. So I can leave that nice and flat and only put foam behind this piece here, which is the piece of cardstock, heavyweight cardstock that's been cut to 1.5 by 5 inches tall. And Amanda also provided me with this roll of foam tape. It's 3 millimeters thick, and it's from Heavy Doodle. You get quite a large roll here. And what I'm going to do is, if you want to attach it the way I am, the battery holder fits on this 1.5 inch section rather perfectly. Without, if you just leave room like I have here, you just put foam above and below. So that means that your battery pack is going to be visible from the outside, but I'm kind of okay with that. I mean, I think the card recipient is going to know that that there has to be some kind of mechanism and battery to make this light up. So it's okay if they see that, I think. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'm going to line up this piece of the easel stopper here. And I gave myself some tick marks where that gap is. That's meant to house my battery unit here. And I'm just going to put just a little teeny bit of score tape just to tack this down. And it should go on the sort of the flat side should go on your card base. So there's a little button on the end, and that's the button you push to light it up. So you want that face up. It'll make that button a little bit easier to get to, a little bit easier to push. Then with all of the loose wire, I'm not gonna tape all the way to the edge because I want to leave a little bit of slack for positioning this. I don't want to tack it down and fix the position of the wiring on the edge. That way it can go wherever it needs to go to line up with the battery. But everywhere else, I've just put some liquid adhesive. So I'm gluing this down pretty flat. I avoided putting glue anywhere where the wires and the lights were. And when I burnish, I'm not burnishing hard over those. This is the one time that I don't firmly burnish because you don't want to have any kinks in your wire. You don't want to have any hard angles or anything that might actually break the circuit. So that's why I just left it in, the natural curls and I didn't burnish firmly over top of it. I just, with my hand, gently kind of pressed around it. And then now I've put the decorative layer of pattern paper over top my easel stopper here. And I'll go ahead and position this right over our the right side of the inside of the card. So this will be, like I said, that easel stopper, and it's got that perfect placement where we've left that gap for our battery pack. So that conceals our battery, and that is your basic light up window complete. Now it's just decorating. So I've got my tree here, and I've got all of my cream colored ornaments, which I didn't love. And so so I took a little bit of a break to rethink what I wanted to do, and that's when I decided to go with gold. And that worked out so much better. And as I was thinking about gold, another thought occurred to me, and that was to actually add a little gemstone to the center. So I've got some clear gemstones here. I've got little itty bitty ones, and some of these were too itty bitty, so I pulled out another set that I have that's clear but in a variety of different sizes. So I just picked one that was large enough to fill the center. The benefit of adding these gemstones, couple of things. One, it if you find that the lights are a little too bright, it helps to kind of knock the lights back a little bit, because now it has to kind of go through the gemstone. But more importantly, when this card is not lit up, the gemstone in the center of these ornaments actually kind of make them look a little bit more ornamental. And instead of looking like they have an empty see-through center, it actually looks like maybe it's a glass ornament. And so aesthetically, that makes these look nice during the daytime when you don't have it lit up. But then when it is lit up, it also just starts to glow and kind of refract that light. And because it's not 100% clear back there, it's these gemstones, I think they always have some foil backing to them. So it does have the effect of I don't want to say dulling the light, but making it just a little bit less bright. So here I'm using just a smidge of foam. This is my low profile foam. It's only 1 millimeter thick, and I am avoiding putting foam behind the 3 ornaments that will light up. You can put the foam behind the other ornaments because you're not going to really see the foam through the gemstone. And the little bit of foam just helps to give a little bit of clearance for the lights. They don't need a ton because, like I said, they're super thin. And so you don't really need that, but I think that just helps to give it a little bit of space there. And these little bits, these are just the centers of those ornaments. I thought they would be really cute as just additional little accents, just to bring some of that gold forward to the front of the card. And so I decided to use them instead of tossing them. And I have multiple sets of action stamps. So I've got a set from TLC Designs, I have a set from Cat Scrappiness, and I have the Lumfon set as well. And they're all different fonts, different sizes, so it's kind of nice with the number of interactive cards that I make, because I do love making pop-up cards and interactive cards, so it's really nice to have different sets too, and they all have different words too. But what I chose was this one, which I really like. It's got the solid colors around it, and then the words are in white, so it's kind of a negative. And it works perfectly because I can use my 3/4 inch circle punch to punch this out. And that way, because it's very everything is so hidden in terms of the light up mechanism, that unless you know that you can light it up, you will want to give a little bit of instruction unless you're there to explain it. So it is nice to have that. And I have never used this bow maker on my all-in-one tool, basically you have two pegs that you can, I'm using it in probably a very different way. I have this very very thin gold thread. It's actually floss, embroidery floss, and it's from DMC. It's Diamond or something like that. And I blame Kim Creates because she's a huge fan of this thread, and she first introduced it to me. So now I'm in love with it too. But it's so thin and delicate that it's I like to kind of do multiple loops for the bow just to give it some extra oomph. And I'm using that as sort of a way to kind of embellish my push here button. And that pretty much wraps up my 5x7 bay window card, light up bay window card. And look how fun that is. So you can see that the lights come through perfectly clearly, even though we've got the gemstone there. And you can even see a bit of that glow from behind the tree too. And part of that's because we left a little bit of that space with the thin foam just to have some of that light be able to leak out. So I hope that you enjoyed this card. I did do a live stream where I made a different card. So if you want to see that version, it's just a different color scheme, but you can pop on over to my live video section and catch the replay of that card as well. Thanks so much. Until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye.